Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this tutorial, we'll develop an API using Flask and Docker. Flask is a micro framework for Python that aims to keep the core simple, yet extensible. This provides a great alternative to the Django framework if you're not looking to develop a full-stack monolithic application. Github links will be in the description. Open your terminal and navigate to a new directory. I'll call it Flask Demo. Add a new folder for the project called server and an init file. The init file in Python makes the directory a callable application. Add a requirements.txt file with the following libraries: Flask, our Python microframework; Flask cores, an extension for adding core support; flask-restx, an extension for building and auto-documenting APIs; Uniq, a WSGI server; and structlog, structured logging for Python. Now let's create a virtual environment and install the requirements. Add a config.py file to the server directory. Here we'll define some settings. Add a main.py file to the server directory as well. This is where we'll define our app. With our app defined, we can now run it from the terminal. As you can see, building a Flask API is easy and requires few dependencies. Let's move on to dockerizing the application and connecting a database to help build out our API. Deactivate your virtual environment and remove it. Update the requirements.txt file with the following libraries: Flask SQL Alchemy, a Flask extension for SQL Alchemy, and Scikop G2 Binary, the PostgreSQL database adapter for Python. Add an app folder with an init file and a config file. We can copy over the contents of the original config file and delete it. Then we'll make some changes. Copy the contents of the main.py file to the init file and delete it. Then we'll make some changes here as well. in the server directory, delete the init file and create a file called manage.py. We'll use this file to start our app as well as extend our app to be used as a CLI. Create an entrypoint.sh script to prevent our app from starting until it has a database connection. Let's add our API and ping health check back into our app. In the app directory, create a folder called API and add an init file to define our API. Then, add a ping folder with an init and views.py file. Back in the API init file, import the ping namespace and add it to the API as a route. Now it's safe to import our API from the app init file. With that, it's time to add Docker files. Create a DB folder within the app directory and add a create.sql file and a Docker file. Now add the Docker file for our application to the server directory. And finally, we can add the Docker compose file to the root of our project. we're ready to build and run our Dockerized application. In this section, we'll define a movie model and implement CRUD, create, read, update, and delete operations, as well as API routes that leverage those CRUD operations. Create a new folder in the API directory called movies. Add an init.py file and a models.py file. We'll add our movie model here. Next, we'll implement our CRUD operations. Create a new file called crud.py. Let's create our serializers, or more simply put, what we expect for parameters when API requests are made. Add a new file called serializers.py to the movies directory. Finally, we can implement our API routes and connect it with our API. Create a new file called views.py in the movies directory. After importing and defining the route in our API init file, we're ready to rebuild and run our containers. That's going to wrap up this video on developing an API with Flask. Thanks for watching.